At 5:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in October, I watched my wife of 8 years climb into her Audi at the Red Cedar Motel on Highway 99, smoothing down the same black dress she'd worn to our anniversary dinner 3 nights earlier. And that's when I realized the spreadsheet I'd been keeping for 4 months was about to become a divorce filing. If you've got some time and maybe something to drink, settle in. This one's long and it gets dark before it gets better. So why did I wait 4 months between finding out and doing anything about it? That's the question, isn't it? Here's the thing. I needed to be sure. Not just sure that she was cheating, but sure that when I finally made my move, there'd be no room for denial, no chance for her to gaslight me, and no way she could take my kids away from me. Because that's what it came down to. I had 2 kids, Lily, 7, and Max, 5. And I'd been their primary parent for 4 years, while my wife climbed the corporate ladder at a tech company in Seattle. I'd given up my engineering career, my identity, basically my entire sense of self, to support her ambition. And she'd repaid me by screwing her boss in cheap motels. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. How a marriage that looked perfect from the outside turned into me sitting in a parking lot at dawn, recording video of my wife leaving a motel room with another man. 4 years ago, when Lily was 3 and I just found out Jessica was pregnant with Max, we had what I thought was a reasonable adult conversation about our careers. Jessica had just been promoted to marketing manager at Next Gen Solutions, a mid-sized tech company that was growing fast. She was making good money, around $85,000 at that point, and her boss had basically told her she was on the VP track if she kept performing. My job was solid, senior software engineer at a different company, but the commute was killing me, 2 hours a day in Seattle traffic, and the hours were brutal. 60-hour weeks were standard. We ran the numbers. Her career had a higher ceiling. Mine was more stable, but capped out earlier, and someone needed to be home with the kids, especially with the second one on the way. So I made what I thought was a temporary sacrifice. I took parental leave when Max was born, and then I just didn't go back. We agreed that when she made VP, we'd reassess. Maybe I'd return to work, maybe we'd hire full-time help, maybe we'd figure something else out. I remember the exact words she used that night. We were sitting on the couch, my hand on her pregnant belly, and she said, "When I make VP, we'll revisit everything, I promise. We're a team, Dan. We're in this together." Yeah, team. For the first couple years, it was fine. Good even. I threw myself into being a dad. Diaper changes, midnight feedings, toddler tantrums, preschool drop-offs, the whole domestic 9 yards. I learned to make a mean lasagna. I became the dad who organized playdates and knew all the other parents at the park. I coached Lily's soccer team. Jessica's career kept climbing, manager to senior manager to director, and we were financially comfortable. Not rich, but comfortable. She was making close to $150 by the time Max turned 3. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. It was subtle at first. The way she'd come home from work and barely acknowledge me. The way she'd talk about her day and mention her colleagues, especially Rick, her new boss, the VP of marketing, with this animated energy she never had when talking to me. The way she stopped asking about my day, because really, what was I going to say? I did 3 loads of laundry and broke up 4 fights over toy trucks. I started feeling like furniture, like I was just there, part of the house, functional but invisible. About 6 months before the motel morning, Jessica got promoted again, senior director of marketing, big raise. She was pulling in close to 180 now. She reported directly to Rick Caldwell, the VP, this smooth talking guy in his early 40s who wore expensive suits and drove a Tesla. I met him once at a holiday party. He'd just gotten divorced. Messy one. His ex took him for a lot of money. He made sure everyone knew. And he had that newly single energy where he was trying too hard to be charming. I remember watching Jessica with him at that party. She laughed at all his jokes, touched his arm when she talked to him, leaned in close. I told myself I was being paranoid. She was networking. It was her job to build relationships with executives. But I felt something in my gut that night, some animal instinct that said, watch this. Then the late nights started. Big campaign launch, she'd say. Executive strategy session. Client dinner in Portland. At first I believed her because why wouldn't I? We'd been together 10 years. Married for 8. We had 2 kids, a mortgage, a life. But then she started doing overnight business trips, which she'd never done before in 4 years at the company. Seattle to Portland for client meetings, Eugene for team offsites, Spokane for conferences. She'd leave early in the morning, come back the next evening, and she'd be different, energized, almost giddy. She'd pack lingerie I didn't recognize, wear perfume she'd never worn at home, and she'd come back smelling like hotel soap and something else I couldn't quite place. One night, about 4 months before the motel, she left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. She was upstairs putting the kids to bed, and I was cleaning up from dinner. The screen lit up with a Slack notification. It was from Rick. Just 2 words and an emoji. Can't wait. My stomach dropped. I know I shouldn't have, but I clicked on the message thread. It wasn't explicitly sexual, not in those few visible messages, but the tone was intimate. Inside jokes, late night messages, a level of familiarity that made my skin crawl. There was one where she'd sent him a photo, I couldn't see what it was, just the thumbnail, and he'd responded with fire emojis and "you're killing me." I closed the laptop before she came back downstairs. I didn't say anything. I was a coward, honestly. I was conflict avoidant to a fault. I told myself maybe I was misunderstanding, maybe they were just close colleagues, maybe I was insecure because I'd lost my professional identity and she was thriving, but I couldn't let it go. So I started paying attention, really paying attention. I checked our credit card statements. We had a joint account. Everything was transparent, or so I thought. And that's when I saw them. Charges at motels, not hotels, motels. The Red Cedar on Highway 99, the Sunset Inn off I-5, the Budget Rest near Tacoma. Places you don't take clients. Places you take someone when you want to be cheap and discreet. I cross-referenced the dates with her calendar. The trips to Portland? No company events listed. I even called the main office number once, pretending to be a vendor trying to reach someone at their Portland location. They told me NextGen didn't have a Portland office. She was lying, systematically, repeatedly. And she was doing it with enough confidence that she must have thought I was too stupid or too checked out to notice. That's when the engineer in me kicked in. I created a spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, location claimed. Column C, actual charge. Column D, time gone. Column E, evidence notes. I started documenting everything. Then I got access to the phone records through our family plan. There was one number she texted and called constantly. Hundreds of messages a month, dozens of calls, many of them late at night after I'd gone to bed. I ran a reverse lookup. It was Rick's number. I wanted to confront her right then. I wanted to scream at her, throw her laptop across the room, demand the truth. But I didn't. Because here's what I knew. If I confronted her without ironclad proof, she'd deny everything. She'd say I was paranoid, that I was jealous of her success, that I was projecting my own insecurities. And if it turned into a he said, she said divorce, I'd lose. She was the breadwinner. She had the career. She had the money for a better lawyer. And courts, even in progressive Washington state, sometimes still favored the working parent over the stay-at-home one. I needed evidence, the kind that couldn't be explained away. So I did something I'm not proud of, but I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I took $8,000 from a small inheritance my late father had left me, money I'd been saving for the kids' college fund, and I hired a private investigator. His name was Derek Manning, former cop, now ran his own investigative firm. I met him at a coffee shop in a different neighborhood, paid cash for the initial retainer, and handed him my spreadsheet. He looked it over, looked at me with this expression that was part sympathy and part professional detachment, and said, "How long you want me on this?" "As long as it takes to get photos and video," I said, "something that would hold up in court." He nodded. "You sure you want to know? Sometimes people hire me hoping I'll prove them wrong." "I'm sure," I said, and I was. For 3 months, June, July, August, I lived a double life. In the mornings, I'd make breakfast for the kids, get them dressed, drive them to school and camp. I'd do the grocery shopping, cook dinner, help with homework, give baths, read bedtime stories. I'd kiss Jessica goodnight and pretend everything was fine. And inside, I was dying. Because I knew she was lying to my face every single day. I knew she was sleeping with her boss while I was home folding her laundry and raising her kids. There were moments I almost broke. One night she came home from one of her late client dinners, and I hugged her at the door like I always did. She smelled like cologne. Men's cologne, not mine. I held her for a moment longer than usual, and she pulled away, laughing. "You okay, Dan? You're being weird." I wanted to say, "I know." I wanted to show her the spreadsheet, the phone records, the motel charges. I wanted to watch her face fall as she realized I wasn't as stupid as she thought. But I didn't. I just smiled and said, "Long day with the kids. Good to see you." In late September, Derek called me. "Got everything you need," he said. "You want to meet?" We met at the same coffee shop. He handed me a manila folder and a USB drive. 47 photos, he said. 12 videos, no audio, but you can see everything you need to see. Motel check-in records, I got his license plate in 17 different visits over 4 months. Timeline's all documented. This is as good as it gets, man. I'm sorry. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat in the dark living room and went through everything. Photo after photo of Jessica and Rick entering and leaving motels. Videos of them kissing in the parking lot. Her getting into his car, him putting his arm around her. One video showed them leaving a room together. She was laughing, fixing her hair, looking happy in a way I hadn't seen her look at me in months. I didn't cry. I was past that. I just felt this cold, crystallizing clarity. She'd made her choice over and over again for at least 6 months, probably longer, and now I was going to make mine. I had 2 options. Option 1, confront her privately, go to marriage counseling, try to work it out for the kids. Option 2, burn it all down and make sure everyone knew exactly what she'd done. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, you probably know which option I chose. I spent the next 2 weeks planning, not emotionally, not recklessly, with the same methodical precision I used to use debugging code. 3-phase approach. Phase 1, legal advantage. I met with Diane Chen, the best family law attorney in Seattle. I showed her everything, the photos, the videos, the credit card statements, the timeline. She looked it over and said, "This is as strong a case as I've seen. Washington is a no-fault state, so the affair won't affect the divorce itself, but it absolutely impacts custody and asset division. You're the primary caregiver. You got 4 years of documentation showing you're the involved parent. She's the one who violated the marriage. We can work with this." Diane walked me through the strategy point by point. In Washington, the court's primary concern in custody cases is the best interest of the child, and that's determined by something called the parenting plan factors. Who's been the primary caregiver, who has the stronger bond with the kids, who can provide stability. "You check every box," Diane said, tapping her pen on my documentation. "You're the one who does school drop-offs. You're the one the teachers know. You're the one who takes them to doctor's appointments, organizes their birthday parties, knows their friends' names. Jessica works 60-hour weeks and spends her off hours with her affair partner. The court will see that. We drafted everything. Divorce petition, custody motion. I was asking for primary residential custody. She'd get every other weekend visitation plus 1 weeknight dinner. Asset protection. I wanted to keep the house so the kids wouldn't have to move, protect my old 401k from my previous job, secure the kids' stability. Diane explained the financials. You'll need to refinance the house to buy out her equity. That's probably around $340,000. Your income now is zero, but you've confirmed you can return to work. Already have a verbal offer from my old company, I said. Remote work, senior engineer position, 140 base. Good, that changes everything. You're not going to be seen as a dependent spouse. You're a capable professional who made a temporary sacrifice for the family. She smiled grimly, and her affair just makes it easier to argue she prioritized personal satisfaction over family stability. The affair wouldn't get me everything, Diane explained, but it would get me enough, especially combined with my caregiving history and her demonstrated absence. One more thing, I said. I want to file the week after Thanksgiving. Is that possible? Diane raised an eyebrow. Specific timing? I'm going to serve her the papers in person, in front of her parents. I need witnesses who can't be accused of bias. Diane was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. That's actually smart, but Dan, make sure you're ready for the fallout. What you're planning, it's not just legal warfare. It's emotional devastation. For her, yes, but also for you, for the kids, for everyone around you. I know, I said, but she made her choices. I'm making mine. Phase 2, professional consequences. I researched NextGen's employee handbook. Jessica had a copy at home, so I just borrowed it one night while she was asleep. There it was, clear as day. Policy prohibiting romantic or sexual relationships between supervisors and direct reports. Required immediate disclosure to HR. Violation could result in termination. Rick was a VP. Jessica was a senior director reporting directly to him. They'd been sleeping together for at least 6 months without disclosure. That was a fireable offense. At minimum, one of them would be reassigned. More likely, especially for Rick at his level, it would be termination. I drafted an anonymous email to the HR director and CEO. Included just enough detail, timeline, policy violation, no photos, but enough specifics that they'd have to investigate. I scheduled it to send the Monday after Thanksgiving. Timing mattered. Phase 3. Social exposure. This was the part I struggled with most. I'm not a vindictive person by nature. I didn't want to humiliate her for the sake of humiliation. But I also knew that if I let this play out quietly, she'd control the narrative. She'd tell everyone I was controlling, paranoid, unsupportive of her career. She'd play the victim. So I needed witnesses. I needed people who loved her to see the evidence and understand that this wasn't about me being a bad husband. This was about her making choices that destroyed our family. Jessica's parents, Tom and Linda, were coming to visit for Thanksgiving weekend. They adored me. They'd always treated me like the son they never had. They told everyone how proud they were that I'd sacrificed my career to raise their grandchildren. They thought Jessica and I had the perfect marriage. I decided to serve her the divorce papers at breakfast on Saturday morning. Her parents would be there. The kids would be asleep upstairs. It would be intimate, devastating, and impossible for her to spin. The 2 weeks between finalizing the plan and executing it were the longest of my life. I maintained the facade perfectly. I cooked her favorite meals. I was attentive and kind. I even initiated sex once, just to see if she'd go through with it, and she did. Mechanical, distracted, clearly thinking about someone else. Afterwards, she rolled over and checked her phone. It was a text from Rick. I saw the notification over her shoulder. Missing you already. I lay there in the dark next to her, listening to her breathing even out as she fell asleep, and I thought, by this time next week, your whole life is going to implode. On Tuesday morning, October 17th at 5 in the morning, Jessica's alarm went off. She claimed she had an early strategy session with the executive team. I pretended to be asleep as she got ready. I heard her in the bathroom, the shower running, the hairdryer, perfume being sprayed. She was putting in effort. At 5:15, she kissed my forehead, a perfunctory gesture, muscle memory, and whispered, "See you tonight." I waited until I heard her car pull out of the driveway. Then I got up, threw on jeans and a hoodie, and followed her. Derek had given me the pattern. Tuesday and Thursday mornings, she'd leave early and go to the Red Cedar Motel before work. Rick would already be there. He told his wife he was going to the gym. They'd meet for an hour, maybe 90 minutes, then both head to the office separately. I drove 3 cars behind her the whole way, paranoid she'd spot me. She didn't. She was on her phone the entire drive, probably texting him. At 5:35 a.m., she pulled into the Red Cedar parking lot. It's a dump, one of those places with hourly rates and a flickering neon sign. She parked next to a silver Tesla, Rick's car. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, fixed her hair, grabbed her purse, and walked to room 237. I parked across the street at a closed gas station, sat there in the dark, engine off, hands shaking. Part of me wanted to burst in there, catch them in the act, make a scene, but that wasn't the plan. The plan required discipline. At 5:47 a.m., the door opened. Rick came out first, looking relaxed and smug, like a man who'd just had sex with someone else's wife and felt pretty good about it. Then Jessica stepped out, smoothing down her black dress, the same dress she'd worn to our anniversary dinner 3 nights ago. She was laughing at something on her phone. They kissed goodbye at her car, not a peck, a real kiss, the kind you give someone you're intimate with. I took out my phone and recorded the whole thing, 30 seconds of video that showed everything I needed to prove. They got in their separate cars and drove off. I sat there for another 10 minutes just breathing, trying to process what I'd just witnessed with my own eyes. It's one thing to know intellectually that your spouse is cheating. It's another thing entirely to watch her kiss another man in a motel parking lot at dawn. I drove home on autopilot, pulled into the garage, couldn't get out of the car, just sat there and cried. Full body-shaking sobs, the kind of crying I hadn't done since my dad died. I cried for the marriage I thought I had, for the years I'd wasted believing we were partners, for every morning I'd kissed her goodbye while she was planning to meet him, for the version of Jessica I'd loved, the woman who used to curl up next to me on the couch, who used to laugh at my stupid jokes, who used to look at me like I mattered, who apparently didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never had. I cried for my kids who were about to have their world torn apart because their mother couldn't keep her pants on, who'd grow up shuttling between houses, having awkward custody handoffs, wondering why mommy and daddy couldn't just get along. I cried because I'd given up everything, my career, my identity, my sense of self-worth, for someone who'd repaid me by screwing her boss in a motel room while I was home making her dinner. And then, after maybe 20 minutes, the tears stopped. My throat was raw. My eyes were burning. But something had shifted. The grief was still there, buried deep. But on the surface, all I felt was cold, hard clarity. She'd made her choice. Every Tuesday and Thursday morning for months. Every late-night text to Rick while I was putting the kids to bed. Every lie about client meetings and strategy sessions. Every time she came home smelling like him and kissed our children goodnight. Now it was time to make mine. I wiped my face, went inside. The kids were up, watching cartoons in their pajamas. Lily looked up. "Daddy, where were you?" "Quick errand, sweetie," I said, forcing a smile. "Want pancakes?" I made blueberry pancakes from scratch, the way I always did on weekends. Flipped them, plated them, cut them into little pieces for Max. The whole time I was mentally replaying the kiss, her hand on his chest, the way she looked at him. At 7:45, Jessica came home. Chipper, energized, smelling like motel soap and him. "Morning, guys." She kissed the kids, ignored me entirely, poured herself coffee. "How was the meeting?" I asked, testing her. "Productive," she said without missing a beat. Rick really drove the agenda hard. She didn't even catch the double meaning. I looked at her, this stranger wearing my wife's face, and thought, You have no idea what's coming. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat in the dark living room with the laptop open. I watched the videos Derek had given me. Dozens of them. Jessica and Rick in parking lots, entering rooms, leaving rooms, kissing, touching. One video showed them in his car, her head thrown back, laughing at something he said, his hand on her thigh. I closed the laptop and whispered to the empty room, "I'm not invisible anymore." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. I finalized everything with Diane. The divorce papers were printed and ready. The custody motion was filed. The anonymous HR email was scheduled. Tom and Linda confirmed they'd arrive Friday evening before Thanksgiving. On Friday, November 24th, they pulled up at 6 p.m. I greeted them at the door with hugs. They brought wine and gifts for the kids and stories about their drive up from Oregon. Jessica was still at work. Last-minute deadline, she'd texted, so I made dinner for everyone. Linda helped me in the kitchen, praising my cooking like she always did. "You're such a wonderful father, Dan," she said. "Jessica is so lucky." I smiled and said nothing. Saturday morning, I woke up at 6 a.m., couldn't sleep. This was it. The day I stopped being invisible. I went downstairs and started breakfast. Blueberry pancakes, bacon, fresh coffee. The same Saturday morning ritual we'd had for years, except this time it was a stage set for detonation. I checked one last time. Divorce papers in manila envelope under my placemat at the table. Jessica's tablet on the counter, logged into her iCloud, photo album ready. Kids still asleep upstairs. Tom and Linda in the guest room, probably just waking up. At 7:10, I heard footsteps. Tom and Linda came down, already dressed. "Smells incredible, Dan," Tom said, clapping me on the shoulder. At 7:12, Jessica appeared. Hair perfect, casual, but put together, scrolling through her phone. Probably texting Rick. She'd spent last night working late, which I now knew meant she'd stopped at a motel on the way home. Everyone sat down. I served the food, poured coffee, made small talk about Black Friday shopping plans. The whole thing felt surreal, like I was watching myself from outside my body. At 7:15, I set down my coffee mug and said, "Jessica, before we eat, I need to give you something." I slid the manila envelope across the table. She looked at it, annoyed. "Dan, seriously, can this wait?" "No," I said. My voice was steady, calm. "It can't. Open it." Tom and Linda exchanged glances. They could feel the shift in the room. Jessica opened the envelope, pulled out the papers. I watched her face as she read the first page. Petition for dissolution of marriage. All the color drained from her face. "What the fuck is this?" "I'm divorcing you," I said, "and your parents deserve to know why." I picked up the tablet and turned the screen toward the table. The photo showed Jessica and Rick kissing in the motel parking lot, timestamp in the corner, October 17th, 5:47 a.m. Linda gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Tom stared at the screen, his jaw tight. "Dan, this isn't..." Jessica started, but I swiped to the next photo, her and Rick entering a motel room, her hand in his. "I understand perfectly," I said. My voice was cold, clinical. "You've been sleeping with your boss for at least 6 months. 17 motel visits that I have documented. I have photos, videos, credit card statements, text messages, all of it." "You were spying on me?" Jessica stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "You violated my privacy." I actually laughed. "Your privacy? You mean the privacy of your affair? The privacy of you fucking Rick Caldwell in cheap motels while I'm home raising your children?" Linda was crying now, tears streaming down her face. Tom looked like he'd been punched in the gut. "He chose to stay home," Jessica shouted, pointing at me. "I never forced him, and maybe if he had any ambition, any drive, I wouldn't have needed..." "Don't you dare." Tom cut her off, his voice sharp. "Don't you dare blame Dan for your choices." I swiped to another image, a screenshot of text messages, one in particular. Jessica telling Rick that I was dead weight and that she couldn't believe she'd settled for someone so unambitious. Linda sobbed openly. Tom just shook his head, disgusted. I turned to Tom and Linda. I want you to know I tried. I suggested couples therapy months ago. She refused. I asked her multiple times if something was wrong, if she was happy. She told me I was the problem, that I was insecure, that I should be grateful she was the breadwinner. I showed them more messages, more photos. The evidence was overwhelming. I'm filing for primary custody, I continued. The kids need stability. She's proven she prioritizes her affair over this family. My lawyer believes I have a very strong case. You can't take my kids! Jessica's voice cracked, panic replacing anger. Watch me, I said. Then I dropped the second bomb. Oh, and Jessica, HR at NextGen received an anonymous ethics complaint on Monday about you and Rick violating the company's policy on supervisor-subordinate relationships. Turns out those motel charges on your corporate card leave quite a trail. They're required to investigate, or the company faces legal liability. Jessica went completely white. You didn't. I didn't have to do anything. You did this. Every time you lied to me. Every time you walked into a motel room with your boss. Every time you came home and pretended everything was fine while I made you dinner and put your children to bed. Tom stood up, pushing his chair back. He looked at Jessica with an expression I'd never seen before, pure disappointment. You could lose your job? After everything Dan sacrificed for you? Jessica was crying now, shaking. Dan, please, we can fix this. I'll end it. I'll do anything. Please don't do this. I'm not negotiating, I said. I stood up, picked up the envelope. The papers are filed. You have 20 days to respond. My lawyer will be in touch. Until this is settled, I expect you to stay in the guest room or find somewhere else to sleep. I walked toward the stairs. I'm going to wake the kids. They deserve a normal Saturday morning. I left 3 shocked, devastated people at that table. Linda crying, Tom staring at his daughter like he didn't recognize her, and Jessica broken and terrified, realizing for the first time that there were consequences for what she'd done. As I climbed the stairs, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. I felt visible. The fallout was immediate and brutal. That same day, Tom and Linda pulled Jessica into the guest room. I could hear raised voices through the walls, words like ashamed and disappointed and how could you? At one point, Jessica screamed, "You've always loved Dan more than me," which honestly probably had some truth to it. But that wasn't my fault. They left Sunday morning instead of Monday. Linda hugged me tight at the door and whispered, "We're so sorry, Dan. You didn't deserve this." Tom shook my hand and pressed an envelope into it. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note. "For lawyer fees. You're a good man and a good father." The kids somehow were oblivious to most of it. I told Lily and Max that same afternoon, age-appropriate version, "Mommy and Daddy are going to live in separate houses for a while. We both love you very much. Nothing is your fault." Lily, perceptive as always, asked, "Is Mommy okay?" "She's going through something hard," I said, "but she'll be okay. We'll all be okay." Jessica, meanwhile, was unraveling. She locked herself in the guest room most of Saturday, calling Rick over and over. He didn't answer. Smart move on his part. The HR complaint was probably already being investigated, and the last thing he needed was more evidence of contact. On Monday, she got the call. HR wanted to see her. Separately, they wanted to see Rick. The investigation was formal, swift, and devastating. By Friday, Rick was gone, terminated for cause. As a VP, he was held to a higher standard. And this wasn't his first warning. Apparently, there'd been a prior complaint about inappropriate conduct with a junior employee that had been dismissed. This one couldn't be ignored. He was escorted out by security, no severance, reputation in tatters. In Seattle's tight-knit tech community, word spread fast. He was blacklisted. Jessica wasn't fired, but she might as well have been. She was reassigned to a nebulous special projects role, corporate speak for "we're sidelining you until you quit." Her promotion to VP, which had been basically guaranteed, evaporated. She went from rising star to office pariah overnight. She came home that Friday night and told me, voice hollow, "They reassigned me. Everyone knows I can barely show my face in the office." I was folding laundry in the living room, didn't look up. Actions have consequences. "You destroyed my career," she said. "No," I replied, finally meeting her eyes. "You destroyed your career. I just made sure the people who needed to know actually found out." She didn't have a response to that. The social fallout was almost worse than the professional one. I told our close friends, carefully, factually, what had happened. Jessica had an affair with her boss. We're getting divorced. I have primary custody. The reactions were mixed, but mostly they broke along predictable lines. Couple friends we'd met through Jessica's work either sided with her or tried to stay neutral. Neighborhood parents, the ones who knew me from school pickups and soccer practices, were overwhelmingly supportive. One friend, Melissa, Jessica's college roommate and supposedly best friend, reached out to me directly. We met for coffee. She looked exhausted. "I need you to know something," she said. "Jessica has been complaining about you for months, maybe longer. She told me you were boring, that you had no ambition, that she felt trapped in the marriage." I nodded. I'd suspected as much. "But," Melissa continued, "I told her to get therapy, to talk to you, to do anything except cheat. She made this choice, Dan, not you." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because she's trying to spin this. She's telling people you were controlling, that you isolated her, that you forced her to be the breadwinner, and I can't let her do that. It's not true." After that conversation, Melissa stopped returning Jessica's calls. The friend group fractured. Jessica found herself increasingly isolated. Most of our friends had really been my friends, parents from school, neighbors, people who actually knew us as a family. To them, I was the guy who gave up his career to raise his kids. She was the woman who threw that away for an affair. At school pickup, other moms would make a point of chatting with me, asking how I was holding up, offering casseroles and play dates for the kids. Jessica, on the rare occasion she showed up, got icy stares and whispered conversations that stopped when she walked by. One mother literally turned her back when Jessica tried to say hello. The worst part? Jessica's own social circle from work had completely abandoned her. The same people who'd invited her to happy hours and weekend brunches suddenly had excuses. "We're really busy. Maybe another time." The group chat she'd been so active in went silent whenever she posted. She'd been demoted from colleague to cautionary tale. Even her extended family pulled away. Thanksgiving invitations to her aunt's house were quietly rescinded. Her brother, who'd always been close with me, called to say he was disappointed in Jessica and offered to testify as a character witness if needed. One Sunday in early December, Jessica called me, crying. "No one will talk to me," she said. "My own family, my friends. Everyone's treating me like I'm toxic." I didn't have sympathy to give. "You made your choices," I said. "These are the consequences." "But it's not fair," she sobbed. "People act like I'm some monster, like I'm the only person who's ever made a mistake." "A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill," I said, my voice cold. "What you did was a choice. 17 documented times, every lie to my face. Every time you kissed our kids goodnight while smelling like him. Those weren't mistakes, Jessica. They were calculated decisions. Now you're learning what it feels like when people see who you really are." She hung up on me. Jessica was being erased from her own life, and there was a part of me that felt guilty about it. It happened about 4 weeks after the breakfast confrontation. I was dropping the kids off at Jessica's new apartment. She'd moved out by then, renting a small 2-bedroom place across town. Lily ran inside, Max following. I waited in the car. Through the window, I saw Jessica kneel down and hug them both. She was crying. full on sobbing, clinging to them like they were the only thing keeping her tethered to earth. Later that night, Lily told me, "Mommy cried a lot today. She said she misses us." I felt something crack in my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything. The breakfast confrontation, her parents' faces, the HR investigation, her isolation, and now her, broken, crying while hugging our kids. I'd wanted consequences. I'd wanted her to face what she'd done, but I hadn't expected to feel like this, like maybe I'd gone too far. I called my therapist the next morning. "I'm struggling," I told her. I see her suffering and I feel bad. Did I go too far? Did I destroy her life?" My therapist was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that helped. "You can hold two truths at once, Dan. She deserved consequences, and you can feel empathy for her suffering. That's not weakness. That's humanity." On Christmas Eve, 4 weeks after the confrontation, a letter arrived, handwritten from Jessica. "Dan," it began, "I know I destroyed us. I know I deserve everything that's happened, but please, don't take the kids from me completely. I'm getting help. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to be better. I miss them so much. I miss who I was before I became this person. I know I can never fix what I broke. I just want a chance to be their mom. Please." I read it 3 times, cried on the third read. I didn't respond. But I did talk to Diane, my lawyer. "Can we revise the custody arrangement?" I asked. "Give her more time." "You're entitled to primary custody," Diane said. "The evidence supports it." "I know," I said, "but she's their mother, and if she's genuinely trying to change, they deserve to have a relationship with her." We settled on a revised arrangement. I kept primary residential custody, but Jessica got the kids Friday evening through Sunday evening every week, plus 1 weeknight dinner. It was more than she was entitled to legally, but it was the right thing to do. When I told her over email, she responded with 2 words, "Thank you." The divorce was finalized 3 months after the breakfast, February 14th, ironically, Valentine's Day. Final terms, I got the house, primary custody, and the stability the kids needed. Jessica kept her 401k, got her every other weekend schedule plus that weeknight dinner. No alimony. Washington law didn't favor it given the circumstances. We split the cars. Everything else was divided roughly down the middle. That day, I took off my wedding ring for the first time in 8 years and put it in a drawer with old photos. Closed the drawer. Closed that chapter. By March, I was ready to work again. My old company welcomed me back with open arms. They needed senior engineers, and I still had the skills. Remote work, flexible hours, salary of $140. I could work from home, still be there for school pickups, still be the primary parent. But now I was also a professional again. I was earning, I was contributing. That first paycheck hit my account, and I sat at my desk and cried. Not sad tears, relief tears. I wasn't dependent anymore. I wasn't invisible. I was me again. Life started to rebuild itself in small, quiet ways. I joined a divorced dad support group, mostly just to talk to people who understood. Met another single dad, Marcus, also in tech, also primary custodian. We started grabbing beers after the kids' soccer games. Just 2 guys trying to figure out this whole single-parent thing. Lily thrived, made honor roll. I cried at the school assembly when they announced her name. Max scored his first soccer goal, and I cheered so loud the other parents looked at me funny. I didn't care. I started dating casually. Nothing serious at first, just coffee dates, trying to remember how to be a person outside of dad and bitter ex-husband. Then I met Sarah, elementary school teacher, divorced, 1 kid of her own. We matched on an app, met for coffee, talked for 3 hours. She understood the single parent struggle, the exhaustion, the guilt, the constant juggling act. We saw each other again, and again. "I like you," she said after our 4th date, "but no pressure, take your time." I did take my time. It was 6 months before I introduced her to the kids, but when I did, it felt right. She was patient with them, kind, didn't try to replace their mom, just was herself. In May, I planted a garden in the backyard, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. Tomatoes, herbs, sunflowers for Lily. I dug in the dirt, planted seeds, watered them every morning. Watching things grow felt like therapy. Saturday morning pancakes became our tradition again. Not tainted by the memory of the confrontation, reclaimed. Just me and the kids, sometimes Sarah, making blueberry pancakes and talking about our week. One evening, kids asleep, I sat on the back porch with coffee, looked at the garden, listened to the quiet house, felt peace. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I just was. And I realized I'm not invisible. Not to my kids, not to my employer, not to Sarah, not to myself. At one of the custody swaps in April, 5 months post-confrontation, Jessica looked different, calmer, less frantic. She'd clearly been working on herself. Therapy, I assumed. "Dan," she said quietly, "can I say something?" I nodded. "I'm sorry. Truly, I destroyed everything. You didn't deserve what I did. The kids didn't deserve it. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm sorry." I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd loved for 10 years, hated for 6 months, and now felt mostly indifferent toward. "I believe you," I said. "I hope you find peace, Jessica, for the kids' sake." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you." We weren't friends. We'd never be friends, but we weren't enemies either. Just two people who shared children and a painful history, trying to co-parent as best we could. In June, 8 months after the discovery, Jessica quit NextGen, took a job at a smaller startup in Bellevue, lower title but fresh start. She seemed lighter after that, less burdened by the weight of everyone knowing. Her relationship with the kids was slowly improving. She was more present during her weekends, less on her phone, more engaged. She'd started reading parenting books, going to therapy specifically about being a better parent. It wasn't perfect, but it was effort, and I respected that. Rick, from what I heard through mutual acquaintances, had moved to Portland, couldn't find work in Seattle. His ex-wife had cut off his access to their teenage kids when she found out about the affair. Last I heard, he was working some mid-level marketing job, burning through savings, bitter and alone. I felt nothing about that. Not satisfaction, not pity, just nothing. He'd made his choices. October 17th rolled around again, 1 year since the motel, 1 year since I sat in that parking lot and watched my life implode. I drove past the Red Cedar Motel on a routine errand, saw the flickering neon sign, felt nothing, no anger, no pain, not even triumph, just complete indifference. That morning, I made blueberry pancakes. Lily helped me flip them, Max set the table. Sarah was there. She'd stayed over for the first time, tentatively becoming part of our family rhythm. We ate together, laughed about something silly Max said, talked about weekend plans, normal, mundane, beautiful life. I looked around the table. My kids, healthy and happy. A kind woman who made me laugh. A future that felt open instead of suffocating. And I thought I was invisible for so long, invisible to her, invisible to myself. But I'm not invisible anymore. I'm here. I'm present. I'm enough. Later that night, after the kids were asleep and Sarah had gone home, I sat at my desk, opened the drawer with the wedding ring and old photos, looked at them for a minute, then closed the drawer and walked away. I don't know if what I did was right or wrong. I don't know if the revenge was justified or if I went too far. I just know it was necessary for my sanity, for my self-respect, for my kids' future. If you've ever felt invisible, ever felt like your sacrifices don't matter, ever felt like you're not enough, I hope my story reminds you of something. You are seen. You do matter. And you deserve better than settling for someone who can't see you. I'm Dan Morrison. I was invisible for years. Not anymore.